Angel, we are now live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and our Facebook group. We're going to be obviously putting this onto our podcast Startup Chats.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm stoked that you're here. I think I've up a little bit early. I think you were just saying before we went live, I made you put you through hell. So I do apologize.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You know, I'm so connected all the time, but it's true that, you know, you try to plan ahead a little bit what's going to happen in the day, but if it doesn't happen, it's okay, and you will know how throughout the conversation today, or you will know why.
Well, let's kick this off because, you know, I'm so excited to talk about this whole topic of, you know, startups and that journey and that challenge that we all face, and I think wherever we can sort of get those pearls of wisdom or advice or help or a little bit of inspiration is always going to be a good thing and always help. So but before we maybe sort of dive into what we're going to focus on, which is that whole, you know, pivoting in times of crisis, I think that's a really interesting sort of topic actually, because I've certainly done that in various sort of, you know, degrees, and you know, we can chat about that. So yeah, it'd be interesting seeing your perspective. But before we do, would you mind sort of introducing yourself to the audience, and just giving a bit of a background about, you know, who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Angel Ribo, and I'm in Dallas, Texas, although I was born close to Barcelona in Spain. Basically
one of my favorite cities, by the way.
Oh, look
Barcelona.
at that.
Love it.
Okay, I thought that you were going to say Dallas, Texas.
I've never been. I'd love to go.
I'd love to come to visit. There's lots of great things here happening. So, but anyway, you know, obviously I love Barcelona too. Basically both corporate CEOs and established entrepreneurs, they hire me to bridge the gap globally for expansion and exposure. The reason why I helped, you know, I use internationalization strategies to accelerate the growth of their companies is because throughout my life, for the last 25 years, I have held more than 1,500 CEOs in 33 different countries. And I was able to do that because actually, let me tell you a secret now that you are actually in the UK. One of the reasons why I'm able to do this is because mom and dad, they put me through an English academy when I was in school, when I was in elementary school. And outside school, I was learning English. And I remember that the summer of 1982, I spent a whole summer in Scarborough, North Yorkshire in the UK, learning English. And I decided I'm not going to speak a word of Spanish for a whole month. And I requested that company to put me actually, obviously, with an English family, but I don't want to have contact with any Spaniard throughout the entire month. So I had actually a Swedish student doing the same thing, learning English in the UK as the same as me. And I only had contact with Swedish people and people from other places, but not with the Spaniards. And that's why I was able to speak English. And then, you know, I started my international career and everything. Something which is also really important is that, you know, as I lived in Latin America for 10 years, my heart and soul is with the kids in need in Latin America. And I started my nonprofit. It's called Wisdom for Kids. I did that 3 years ago. I'm the co-founder and president of Wisdom for Kids. And we help underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using the local resources. That's in a nutshell, you know, who I am and what I do in my life, Ben.
No, that sounds amazing. You sound like you've been doing a lot and have a lot on your plate right now. So
absolutely,
it's always fascinating. And to be honest with you, I'd love to sort of dive more into all of those little, you know, all those elements and those niches to understand more about them. That'd be amazing. But maybe that's for another day.
Absolutely. We can be, I mean, obviously, thank you very much for having me, Ben, here. And thank you, everybody listening to us today. I can be with you guys anytime. You just tell me 5 minutes before, and I'll promise to be there. Okay, Ben? Pinky promise.
and that never happened, of course.
Pinky promise.
Pinky. My son does that to me. He makes me do pinky promises.
You see? Of course, I told you just 5 minutes, as opposed to the 1 minute today. It's 5 minutes. I mean, this is like 5 times more time ahead. It's wonderful.
You'll have to return the favor for me. You'll have to do the same for me one day.
No. Of course, obviously, I'm giving Ben a hard time just because he's this kind of guy that he takes you know, jokes and being hard on him as lightly as I do. So it's a pleasure to be with someone in life that doesn't take everything judgmentally, which we unfortunately tend to do. And you know, that's actually one of the challenges of the startup entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? You've got to be so adaptable and level-headed, quite cool and calm under pressure, and not getting too hyped or too upset either way, because it's a journey. It's not a sprint, isn't it? So you've got to keep an eye on that bigger picture. So
Absolutely.
And keep moving forward. That's the key. Keep moving forward. So let's dive into the whole sort of topic of pivoting. As we know, sometimes, a startup and an established business has to pivot. I mean, we've seen a lot of established businesses have to pivot in this time of, the COVID-19 and all the rest of it, particularly when, a business stream suddenly was closed off. A lot of brands had to sort of pivot towards more direct consumer sales rather than B2B sales. But certainly within that pre-launch phase and starting a startup, that can happen too. I know it's actually happened to us recently with one of our product launches. And without going into that, but I think it's a challenge that we face at various levels. And I guess thinking within that pre-launch phase, one of my thinkings is it sometimes best to pivot before you launch, if it's abundantly clear that you should, or sometimes is it better just to launch, test the market, and then pivot?
That's a great question. And actually, you probably remember that probably it was like already 10 years ago that this guy invented this business canvas that you actually, it was a collaborative work developed here in the north of the country, in the US, by someone in the MIT, I think it was. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because we tend to forget that the buck, right, the dollar, the money starts with sales. And we are so hard on ourselves, going back to what I was saying about being judgmental, we are so hard on ourselves that we try to do everything else look perfect before we even talk to potential clients. Obviously, everybody in the startup world talks about the minimum viable product or minimum viable service, all these kind of things. But in reality, the only thing, let's say you and I, we have an idea today, and it's an amazing idea, which could be actually easy for us to have a great idea today. And we say, we're going to launch it. You know what we need to launch it? Okay, we commit that between now and 24 hours, you talk to 5 potential clients in the UK, you talk to 5 potential clients in Texas. We have 10, let's say only 50% of them show up. We already have market feedback. So I think I'm responding to your question. I'm a big proponent of, if you eventually have to launch something into the market, why don't you start talking to the market? And it doesn't have to be perfect. You have friends, you have former colleagues, you have relatives, you have neighbors, you name it. You go to a store, you go to a coffee shop, you talk to the guy which is serving you, the bartender. You can even ask that person for their feedback about what you want to launch. So to your question, my main business mantra is take imperfect action now. That's me. That's my clients. Take imperfect action now. So definitely, I would reach out to the market first, and then I would start strategizing about what's the best way I can launch or pre-launch my product or my service or my company or my venture. But definitely, I mean, I have seen so many people wasting so many hours, so many days, so many months perfecting something before even talking to someone in the market to see if that would fly or not. So that's definitely my response to that.
No, it's very true. I think within a good pre-launch phase, speaking to the audience is absolutely critical, because like you said, too much time can be wasted on tech development, and your whole bubble of one, an opinion of one is always dangerous, as they say. So I think there's no doubt. But it's interesting, as talking about the pivoting challenges. We faced a technical challenge, for example, and I was thinking about, I wonder if you could sort of categorize those problems, whether they're it's the challenge of or the wanting to pivot because of technical challenges, and you realize that initial angle is closed off to you. For example, you need to feed in, you need something with you're relying on a third party, and then suddenly they cut off their service, and your whole product roadmap was and the USP was around this collaboration. So you're relying on a third party, and then suddenly they pull the rug from under your wheels. when that happens, clearly you need to pivot because you can't really launch to market without it. But I think one of the mistakes, and that's something that's we've recently found. So we're having to do a slight pivots in terms of our launch, one of our products that we're releasing, in terms of just realigning some of those core elements. Interestingly, we had and it's still ongoing, is another product launch which started way back when, and that was my thing. And I think I made those exact same mistakes that you talk about, and you shouldn't make, which is, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. Just one more thing. Can we just do this feature? And then suddenly it becomes like a monster. And I think that has been a huge frustration for me, certainly, is not getting something out of the door. So it's interesting, isn't it? The pivoting can come for different reasons.
But you see what? I mean, this is how I typically don't curse on podcast interviews, but I don't know if I'm allowed to do it today. But we get so sidetracked by perfection, and you just described the perfection sidetrack. That you wanted to do this additional feature, this additional thing that would make this offer like magnificent, like extraordinary, it's spectacular, right? But suddenly you get so into the trenches of that thing, But in reality, guess what? And I've seen that last year. I saw that with many technologies and many providers saying, we're not sure if we're going to be around for a long time. But guess what? The difference between the technologies that I kept on working with or the others that don't, because maybe they were scaling down, downsizing, whatever, is the attitude of the customer service people, the support people. So even if their product wasn't perfect, I stuck with them because their customer service, the attitude of the support team was flawless. They were really genuine human beings that were there to serve me. When someone is really acting from within, being really present and saying, hey, this is what we have. This is what we got. We know that you are going through challenges. We are also going through challenges. I'm going to spend probably, it's going to take for me 3-4 times longer to respond to your ticket, but I'm still going to be here, and I apologize ahead of time. So setting up expectations, Ben, is so important. It's so important. I'd rather work with someone who has a not so, let's say, mature technology, or not such a comprehensive technology or service, but their relationship with me is so human, is so empathetic, because I really value that, and I'm going to connect with that person much more in depth.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because ultimately we start talking about the whole branding element of a business, of a startup, of an entity. What are the core values of that business? How does it want to interact and engage with its customers and clients on board? And I think we then start sort of diving into that world of the community, building a community, and whether that's, I guess, having a really good call center or team that respond to tickets and problems, or even I've seen really interesting communities built up on like Facebook groups where startups are really engaged with their communities. And I think having that authenticity and that dialogue, that's the key, isn't it? Like you touched on, it's that dialogue to say, hey, Angel, we're working on it. This is our tech roadmap. This is what we're working on. We're struggling. We're trying to get things off the ground. We're bootstrapping it, or whatever it is. And then you can feel, more of a passion towards that brand and company, and see the face behind it.
Yeah.
And on its own, actually, if we think about it, that's such a strong, powerful part of planning in any pre-launch phase, but also post-launch, because obviously that's when you've got to deliver effectively. And follow through, and that's always challenging.
Absolutely. I can give you even another example. Last year, there's this technology that they love to use. My team is an expert on using that. It's called Zapier, which allows you to automatize so many different systems. Zapier takes webhooks from here and there and blah blah blah, integrates so many. So I use a specific dashboard with my clients, and guess what? This guy said they're not cheap, but this guy said, we're going to give you 3 to 6 months for free, just because we know you're suffering. And their support system is great. Okay, so they gave me 6 months for free subscription last year, just for the sake of it. Just for the sake of it, because I was a small business owner, I qualify, blah, blah, blah. Just 3-4 months ago, a competitor came up to the market at a fraction of their price. And they offer you so many more actions per month, which is the currency that Zapier uses. So like a fraction of the price and offering you much more for that fraction of the price. But guess what? I'm not going to change from Zapier. I'm just giving you an example, right? I'm not going to change because they stood behind me, with me all the way. They provided me extraordinary service. They even said, we know cash flow is an issue for you. We're going to support you. So, oh my God, do you think that they will ever leave Zapier as a technology provider for my team and myself? Of course not. The branding, they have, my concept about these guys, what they're going to do for me whenever my business grows more and more and more, and I need them more and more and more, they will be there for me all the way. It's amazing. Exactly. It's about the brand. It's amazing. Do you agree?
100%. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess if you've got that strong narrative, that strong brand, that's good, that story that people buy into, if you do have to pivot, then it's much easier to bring them with you, because I guess you can again have that honesty and say, hey, listen, we're having to realign our business model. We're having to do this. Come with us. And when that pivoting moment does come, I'm guessing that's a lot easier.
Yeah, it is because again, you trust them. You have already developed that relationship. It's all about expectations, Ben. I mean, really setting up the right expectations is so important at all levels. We tend to, there's a concept I use both when I coach personally the CEOs and when I work with in business, when I'm doing business consulting, which is a secret contract. And think about it. This concept of secret contract is just brilliant. With every single person that you have a relationship with, Ben, and everybody listening to us, with every person that you have a relationship, there's a lot of things that you've never shared with that person, but you expect from them. You've never spoken about those things, but you expect from these people a certain things. And the other way around. You've never talked about that with them, or they never talked about that with you, but they expect things from you. And that even happens with your business, with your family, with your partner, with your life partner, with your kids, with your father, mother, with your siblings. There's always those things that you expect from them, but you've probably never asked them or talked with them about them. That's why setting expectations is so important in the journey of an entrepreneur, of a startup CEO. Setting the right expectations with everybody, with all your stakeholders, is so important. And just with that, you are building, just with that very simple thing of setting the right expectations, you're starting to build a very strong brand. You will never be in denial. You will never sweep things under the rug, ever. You will always be there because you are very clear on the expectations. That's so important. And it's so easy to do. But in reality, we don't do it.
No, it's interesting, and I think you hit the nail on the head, because it also is very similar to just old ways of doing business well. We're talking about digital businesses, online businesses, and all the rest, but it's about doing business well, and it's always been the case. Whenever you're dealing with a client, setting expectations, whether it's timeframes or what you can achieve by when, and being realistic with that rather than over promising. If you can set a realistic expectations and actually over deliver and things like that, it's just simple things, isn't it? But I think what we need to what we need to start thinking about, I guess, as startup founders and all the rest of it, is how we set those expectations in a digital format to the masses, if that makes sense. How do we communicate that? And that might be simple as just, I guess, creating a Facebook group about your business and start talking about it, and then setting those expectations. It's interesting, actually. I've started to sort of observe the technology side of. By the way, I don't want this to get into some crypto sort of video here, because there's plenty of those out there. But it's interesting the technologies behind it, and some of those guys who are leading those technologies. and the way that they build community, and the way that they engage and constantly keep their audience who are interested updated. The one that springs to mind, if I'm honest, is probably I'm gonna forget his name. The Cardano founder, Charles Hodgkinson, something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. And he's constantly sort of talking about Cardano and what they're doing and all the rest of it. And that's when you just think about it for, I guess, your own business or your own startup it's interesting lessons that you can possibly take for yourself post-launch, but equally, I think pre-launch, and start getting a bit of hype behind it before you even go live potentially. When should a business, I guess, not pivot? That's an interesting question. Can businesses pivot too soon?
I think that the market speaks. I think that the most important thing is to see if the market is actually moving, is shifting, if the market is asking for different things or not, if the market is still willing to pay for the same products and services or not. That's the question. It's not about us. It's about the market. It's about, is there a new market being created? Is there a new community being created they're going to want specific things? So that's the question. I think that you have to really put the thermometer in the market. You have to have those conversations, those imperfect conversations with your potential clients, and see, hey, will you keep on paying for this? Do you still feel the value? Do you still feel the value in these kind of products? Or right now, what's happening now, what do you think is going to help you go to the next level? How many times, honestly, think about this, Ben. How many times before you sell to a client, you actually tell them this: I know I'm going to be part of your problem when you place the PO with me, because you're going to put X amount of money on my pocket and you will have nothing in return. My commitment to you is that I will make as much as I can to return on your investment. But how many times you have told that your clients, I care so much, I know that I'm going to be your problem right now when you place the purchase order, right? And I also care, I really care about how you are going to recover that investment. These conversations are very uncommon and kind of conventional, because they are uncomfortable, because we think, oh, maybe someone doesn't place the PO, right? It's very similar to, as entrepreneurs, when we start niching, and we start thinking of what's the right way to position, what's the what's that sentence, that pitch sentence, that statement that we use when we're trying to craft it, that we're always between this 30,000 level feed, copywriting, or onto the ground level copywriting, right? We're always trying to bring as many people as possible to our world so they can buy, or we niche down so much so that we really speak clearly to someone who are really the people that we want to serve, right? We also move in that space. You see, it's the exact same thing. Obviously, I think we have to be extremely precise, because we really want to serve someone, and we want to serve this someone really, really well, right? So to your question, again, definitely there's a moment where you have to decide if it's the right moment to pivot, or if to pivot or not. But again, it's all about who you are serving. Let me tell you an example. What could you say has happened last year with 7.5 billion people? If there is one factor that had all 7.5 billion at some point, it's fear. Okay. I'm not talking about politics. Okay. I'm just saying what it is. There's never been more fear in the planet like last year. Okay. And maybe it continues this year for whatever reason. Okay. I have been building bridges. You are a public figure. I'm a public figure. We're here to build bridges. We're not here to fracture the society. We're here to actually help everybody come together, get together, and make this world a better place. That's why you're doing what you're doing. 100%. That's what I'm doing. Exactly. Right. So, but still, if there's fear, think how you can help everybody. If you know that everybody's going to be in fear, why don't you talk to your market and you double check that that's the reality, and double check if that fear is going to move the needle for what they need. They may need some additional personal support. They might need, support for specific areas in their business. Right? Is that fear going to affect the existing clients or not? Is it going to affect will you have to deliver your product or your service in a different way? Again, it's all about the market. It's all about the people, how they feel. It's all about human beings. It's all about human beings, how they feel inside. They're going to make the purchase decision. The buyer, decision has it changed? Are there different criteria? The purchasing criteria of our clients, has it changed? The decision process, has it changed? It's all these kind of things that you have to think about before you decide to pivot or not.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's an interesting point. Has it changed? I mean, ultimately, their buying decision might not have changed, but the way that they buy it may have changed. They might not be able to go into the shop like they used to. So, how can you deliver that product or service in a format that they can still access? Because they may well still want it. We've seen that, haven't we, with gyms? Gyms have got, people can't go to physical gyms in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in America, but so people are having to think about, how can I deliver that course online effectively, because those people still want that. And you're 100% right. And I think this goes from pre-launch and carries on continuously forever, is knowing your audience. You touched on that, and listening to your audience. But it's really easy to say that. Well, people think, oh, my audience is everybody. And I think it's so important. And you touched on it. You got to really drill down on who you want to help. And know that market inside out, and that can change. But absolutely. I think have a focus where it is right now. Going back to the is there a right time to pivot? It's interesting because I completely agree with everything you're saying, but part of me also wonders whether you can be too soon. You can be an innovator, and you could be creating something that the market's never seen. So people don't necessarily sometimes know that what you have is going to help them. And that's an interesting challenge. We're seeing a lot of this actually in various sort of technologies. Things are coming out all the time. But you might not get that initial traction.
I agree. But it all comes down to, as you know, people buy from you what they want, but you know what they need, right? I mean, you define a transformation path, right? You define the transformation path. You talk to them with your pitch. You talk to them to find them where they are, and then you describe a transformation path, and you are selling them the transformation and the final destination of that transformation, right?
You got to tell a good story, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. But again, I think that we make a decision as entrepreneurs. We make a decision every single day of what we talk about and who we talk about. At the end of the day, if you are able to describe that transformation, they might not know, they know what they want, but they don't know what they need. So you're still able to sell to them what they need if you are able to position it as what they want. Okay, so obviously there's this very famous book that you've probably read, The Crossing the Chasm, about technology adoption. Very old book already, like 20 years, 30 years old.
I'll be honest, I'm a really bad reader. I'm honestly, I'm so
okay. No problem.
So I'd love to be a big reader. I really would.
It's okay.
Crossing.
It's okay. Crossing the chasm. So it basically states, when a technology is ready to go to the majority, to not only to the early adopters, so to the majority, right? So it talks about that. So yeah, exactly. So regardless, probably in the beginning, your price point will be at a level that it still justifies the profitability that you need in the company. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's always the same thing. Are you able to position what your clients want from your pitch so that you give them what they want? They buy what they want, but you give them what they need because you are the expert. You are the subject matter expert. You're giving them what they need because you know more about that, because you are the expert. And obviously expertise is one of the most important things when you're pivoting, right? I mean, are there areas of expertise that you probably have not pitched enough to your audience? That's an area of, as you know, of innovation and being ahead of the curve and being creative and all these kind of things, and I think that also as entrepreneurs, when we are in startups, I think that we all the time we see new things. We're ahead of the curve. I mean, we really see those innovations because when we push so hard and we do so many things for so hard because our life goes on it, right? So eventually we discover many other things and new ideas and new horizons open up for us. And and it is what it is, and so I mean, if you are an awakening enough entrepreneur, there's consistently reasons and ways for you to be innovative and to start trying those innovations into the market.
No, definitely. I think like any good entrepreneur, they're constantly looking at the world in a different way. I call it my invisible radar. It's this. If anyone's watching the video, you'll be able to see what I'm doing. But if you listen to the podcast, you won't. But basically, it's like up there constantly, and it's just going, and then it's all hones on something, and then suddenly it's like, oh wow, this is like, and your brain starts going 100 miles an hour, and then your wife tells you to calm down and stop being silly and get focused on what you're doing.
Exactly,
because it's always challenging, isn't it? It's getting pulled too far in too many different directions.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Talking about, again, getting back to the pivoting. I think when somebody needs to pivot, having a good personal brand makes it a lot easier to pivot. And I think sometimes lots of business owners don't really focus on their personal brands. What's your sort of thoughts around that?
Well, I think there's two. This is a two-way street, right? Because you want to have a very strong personal brand, but at the same time, you don't want to be the main constraint on your business, right? So you have to be careful, okay? Because you obviously want to have a whole, system, people that will support you in delivering all that, okay? So the personal brand is very important, but also make sure that in the delivery of your products and services, you are not a constraint. So that's the number one thing. Do I believe in like having a very strong personal brand? Absolutely. And it's much easier to build than what people think. I'm blessed enough to have been invited to your podcast, Ben, today, and I have probably 3 or 4 more today. I'm there's a lot of people reaching out to me, and I'm really extremely blessed that happens. But it's relatively easy just to give. I mean, I'm giving just some nuggets that people might like or might not, but it's being present. It's spending 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour, adding value to someone's audience, and by doing this, you are actually building my brand. I'm building my brand right now, thanks to you. I'm grateful to you and to your audience. And again, people think that branding is this big, massive monster that we've never seen their face, right? But it's so difficult, and only large corporations can actually build your brands. Not at all. Just answering an email on the chat on LinkedIn, you're building your brand. Let me give you another example.
100%.
When I say happy birthday to someone on LinkedIn, I do it in a different way. I tell you, people remember me because of the way I give them the happy birthday. And it's so simple. And the same thing when they change positions in their companies. I do it in a different way. Guess what? You don't need anything. If you're starting small and then you want to scale up in the future, guess what? You can start doing this right now. Be yourself. Don't be afraid of yourself. It's very true what Tony Robbins says in his events, which is, what we are fearful of as human beings is of our potential, is of how powerful we are. It's not of our flaws. It's not that we will not be able to deliver. It's of our potential, of our power. We're really powerful. We all have this expertise inside of us that nobody else will be able to deliver just because of the experience we have had in our lives. You have had your experience, Ben. You've gone through several, successes and failures. You've learned a lot of lessons. Everybody has had their own journey, and that journey is of value to someone else. That's why everybody can really become an entrepreneur if they really want to. That value, that intrinsic, unique value of anybody out there can really help other people, to overcome their challenges in their personal lives or in their business life. It is what it is. It's by definition.
100%. And also what I love about it is it gives, several things. It gives a face behind the business. So it has you have that real sort of personal element. And I think that's the future for business, having personality. But also I think as an individual, we all know we have many layers. We have many interests. Whereas a business is obviously clearly focused on one area, possibly with a very focused audience. But with a personal brand, people, you're able to express more of your interests. You're able to express more of your fascinations and your other hobbies and other, businesses. So I think certainly if you do need to pivot, it's much easier to do so, and because people believe and buy into you, not that particular product or service. I think that's something very, very interesting. So in terms of sort of top tips or advice you could possibly pass on to any budding, startup founder, what would that be?
Well, I said it before briefly, but it's definitely, I think that's, honestly, I think this is at least 50% of the success, of the secret to success for any entrepreneur right now, which is take imperfect action now. Take imperfect action now. Expose yourself. Whatever you want to do, start doing it right now, immediately. Start talking to potential clients, to potential partners, to potential collaborators, to potential allies, immediately. Take imperfect action now. Don't wait. There's never going to be a perfect time for you to become an entrepreneur. Never.
Yeah.
So why don't you start doing it now? You don't really need much. Honestly, you don't really need much. Really. I mean,
what did they say? Yesterday's the worst day, today's the best day, or something like that. I probably got that completely wrong. No, yesterday was the best day. Today, I can't remember. I'm just probably making something up.
No, that's okay. But it's a matter of, hey, take imperfect action now. And then as soon as you start making steps, taking those steps, as soon as you start doing that, you will start seeing the forest. You will start seeing this works, this doesn't work, this could work, this couldn't. You start seeing the rest of it. But you have to start making those steps. You know what I mean? So
definitely.
Exactly. So be humble enough to do that.
Definitely. And just out of interest, on a side note, Angel, what's the sort of whole startup scene like in Dallas, and in your hometown? What's business like there?
Well, I have to say, first of all, it has changed and improved a lot. Dallas used not to be the startup hub that it is today. I've been very involved with the startup community here. Actually, last year, it's so funny. Last year, I gave 2 different webinars to the startup community here, and the title of both webinars were Pivoting in Times of Crisis. both of them. So there's a very strong community for startups here, very strong. That particular accelerator I gave the webinars to, it's called The Deck, but there's many accelerators. The mayor of Dallas himself, he has said many times on the stage, he wants to become a very stronghold, important stronghold of the startup community in the country. And there's a lot of, angel investors community and family offices. And this, it's really a great place to be an entrepreneur and to start up your business. I'm very involved with the Startup Week here and with the Startup Weekends. I've been the jury for a few Startup Weekends as well. So, it's a great place to be, definitely. I would encourage anybody that would like to maybe try and come to the US. This is a great place to be.
Fantastic. And am I right in thinking a lot of people are moving out from California and Silicon Valley to Dallas? Totally. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true. Actually, large corporations, even before the pandemic started large corporations from California started to relocate here. And right now it's massive. It's massive, the amount of people that are moving from California and many other states to Dallas, to Texas, North Texas, because Dallas is strategically positioned. You don't think about it, but Texas is a huge state. We will never run out of space. That's the beauty. We will never run out of space. And we don't have a state income tax, which is great. And also, the property prices are pretty reasonable. So yeah, it's a great place to be. Ben, you should start making your luggage here. Come on.
Well, I've got a wife and 2 kids to sort of bring in tow. So
great school systems here. Great school system.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, absolutely. You know what? We can have this conversation aside, Ben.
Well, it'd be great one day, definitely. I think in my dream one day, I really want to make sure I get to meet, like you in the real world, and all my guests, because I think it's it's very easy for us to just do it virtually, and that's fantastic. But I think if we can actually try and do that, like down the pub and have a beer, that's where, relationships can get built and go further. And I think, digital and what we can do now is amazing. But I think if we can get that, carry on with that social element into the real world, I think it gets even more powerful. Yeah, no, definitely. So one day I will get over to Texas, and come and say hello. So no doubt, I'd love to come and say hello.
Awesome. Please do.
Brilliant. Well, Angel, listen, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure. Fascinating to chat about pivoting and some of the challenges and all the rest of it. And you take care and have a great day.
And you too. Thank you very much. And if I may, just to tell people how they can find me.
Absolutely.
Okay, so again, my name is Angel Ribo. Last name is R-I-B as in boy O. R-I-B as in boy O. B as in boy O. The easiest way to reach out to me is to send me an email to Angel as in heaven, angel@angelribo.com. Okay. Thank you very much. Really, Ben, it's been a pleasure to be here. And thank you everybody that has been listening and watching to us today.
100%. I'll put all your links in all the show notes and all the rest.
How kind of you. Thank you.